All right, so we're going to finish talking about Kant today. We had finished talking about the second form, and we started talking about the categorical imperative that Kant's principle is. And just to refresh the memory, we talked about the categorical imperative is that's Kant's moral principle that compares moral philosophy to the principle of utilitarianism that they have. His test for right or wrong, there are different ways to formulate the principle of utility, and also Kant had different foundations for his principle in that at least 4 of them were found in his writings, and 2 of them call on the first and the second forms of the categorical principles. Remember, we talked about that the first form of the categorical principle that we talked about was the test for right or wrong. First form is that maxim, act only on the maxim that will be a universal law. And remember, by maxim, we talked about this is that action or that policy that we have to put to the test to make sure that everyone could follow that particular rule. If it does not meet that test, that everybody can follow it, it does not meet a universal law. So in other words, the best example that I can give to you, if I say that everyone has to give taxes of 10% of their wage, I know that no matter whether or not you make $1, or whether or not you make $10, or you make $100, or you make $1,000, then everyone can make 10% of that. That becomes a universal law. 10%, whether or not you're of $1, you're going to be 10 cents. Of $10, you're going to be $1, etc. However, if it doesn't meet this categorical first run of the act of the maximum, the universal law that everyone can abide to, then according to Kant, it is not a good moral principle. If everybody can't meet it, that is not a form that you should use. And then we talked about the second form of Kant's moral principles, and how he determines this according to that is the key characteristics of a person's ability. Yeah, Yasmin.
Okay, so sidebar. So is this one from last Tuesday?
Yep. No, from last Thursday.
Thursday, and I missed that class, correct?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you'll see it up. It's up on the internet. It's up on your canvas, so you can see that and be able to with YouTube. So I'm just
when we start with the go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just going back over where we stopped with that video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and when we start the new discussion, can you just let me know like how you broke it down to us last time? Like, this is what we really need, because I want to screenshot it, but I just want to make sure it's like exactly what I really need so I can put it in my notes.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that you need to really know is this categorical principle of this act maxim. By maxim, Kant means description of the action or policy that I have to put to the test. That was one of the things that we talked about. Maxim. We really have to understand that this moral principle of categorical imperative is a principle of fairness. That is the concept for categorical imperative. It has to be a principle of fairness, and I should not do what I am not able that everyone else is able to do. One of the things for that principle, for this first form of categorical imperative, is that I have to have a universal rule. It's a fairness. I should not do what I am not able to will that everyone do. So if everyone can't do it, then it does not meet the test for right or wrong. It does not meet the act on the maxim that will as a universal law. And by maxim meaning the description of the action or policy that I will put to the test. And so that's the first form that Kant always does. Because remember with utilitarianism, they don't have a maxim. They don't have a sense or a rule. That's why we had to divide in utilitarianism the act and the rule, in terms of that, because there was an act, but then there's also a rule. The rules would say that this becomes the universal way that everyone can meet. But Kant says, I should not put on you something that everyone can't do. I could not say this is a moral law if everyone can't do it. If every culture, if every person, if every being, if it goes against everybody's mindset, if everyone cannot do it, it cannot be a universal moral law. Okay, making sense? So
yes, I got it so far.
okay, so the second form we talked about on Thursday with the group was that we consider what constitutes proper treatment of persons according to Kant, according to the characteristic of their ability to set goals. And so the idea with Kant and how it is different than utilitarianism is that he believes that persons are autonomous. It's not that point of utility like utilitarians are. They are literally self-ruled and least capable of being self-ruled. So as persons, we choose our own plans, our own friends, etc. And Kant's statement of the second rule of the categorical impairment comes as follows. Always treat humanity, whether in your own person or that of another, never simply as a means, but always at the same time as an end, which is different from utilitarian, because remember, they talked about the ends justify the means, right? But Kant, on the other hand, says, no, you should always treat all people, whether or not it is your own person or other people, not simply as a means, but always at the same time at the end. What is the conclusion that's going to happen to that person? What is that going to be beneficial for them? What is that going to mean for them? That is the important part of that. And then the second part of this second form is that people are valuable. And regardless of whether or not they are useful or loved or valued by others, we should not simply use others to let others be used. Because oftentimes, remember we talked about the issue of utilitarianism with the trolley problem, is that when people became less human to us, you could very well hit them with the trolley, right? If they didn't have anything to do with us, they were a random somebody where they weren't loved, you didn't know them, they didn't have any value, then you would go on and make sure that you saved the big group of people and hit the little person that you didn't know. But Kant says, no, people are valuable, whether or not they are useful. So people with disabilities or loved or valued by others, we should not simply use others, let others be used. That is the difference between utilitarianism and Kant's theory. We clear so far? And good morning, Dominique.
Good morning, Dominique.
Good morning.
So far, I'm clear.
Okay. So the idea that we did not get to, or we just started getting to as we were wrapping up the day, is that the categorical imperative is the act for the sake of duty only, whereas the hypothetical imperative is acting in order to receive some kind of reward. Now, Kant argues that the categorical imperative is the only good way to act, that we should, in that first form, thinking about the universal rule, making sure that everyone can do it. And then in the second form, making sure that everyone's autonomy is respected and that everyone is useful in that. And so for an example that he gives is that one should help an old lady cross a road because it is a good thing to do, not because it will make you feel good. And even if a good act makes you feel good, this is not the reward. It is a bonus, according to Kant. So in other words, if you guys were in the middle of a city, wherever city that you might be in, and you were walking down the street and you saw a person, maybe an elder person, whose purse just got snatched, right? And you see the person just, kick the woman down and snatch their purse. Your ability to determine, according to Kant, what your responsibility is to make sure that that woman is picked up and make sure that if it is within your means and possible for you to help retrieve that purse. Now, the part that is in us, the act for the sake only, the reward of it is, if I know that I can catch that person, if I know I can pick that woman up, I might feel good about myself. He said, that's a good thing. He says, but you don't do it so that it makes you feel good, but it is a reward. It's just a bonus. You get that so far, guys?
Yeah, so basically what he's saying is that it should be something we automatically should feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Because it's something that everyone can do. You can pick that woman up. Now, you might not be able to chase after the person who took her purse, but you
can help her.
You can help her out.
Which, with today's society going on, don't nobody help nobody today. Like a lot. It's either they pull out the phone to record what's going on instead of actually helping that person, because either they're scared for their life, or it's just, I don't want to get involved because this is not my thing. I don't really know what's going on. And it's like, it's messed up, because how do you see someone getting raped on a train and just think not to do nothing?
Right.
Like, what if that was your significant other or your brother or your sister or your mom? So yeah.
And that's what deontological ethics is all about. It's this principle where we act in a universal way, where we're supposed to not treat people as what justifies the end, means, but actually see them in this way. And going back to this slide, going back to this idea that it is important to lay this foundation and understand that people mean who are valued, to treat humanity not just as a means, but as the end, making sure that they're always cared for, making sure that people are valuable, whether or not they're useful, loved, or valued by others. We should not simply use others or let others be used. And so that is why Kant would disagree with utilitarians. So let's look at them side by side. Utilitarian ethics, and this is where we stopped on Thursday, versus deontological ethics. So Bethan and Mill are utilitarians. Kant, Rawls, Walzer, these are all deontological, ethical people. So consequentialist ethics, according to utilitarians, is always case by case basis, outcome based. However, rule-based ethics under deontological ethics is one universal rule for each situation, all times, all people, all places, okay? So there is always a universal rule with deontological ethics. And with utilitarian, just like we talked about case by case basis when we talked about the trolley problem and we changed the elements. Now it's your family on the, it's on the track. And now the woman with the pregnant woman is on the track. And we keep changing those scenarios. It's by case, outcome based, right? Number two, under utilitarian ethics, Bethan and Mill would say it's that hypothetical imperative is what if? What if this happens? Do we change this scenario? What if this happens? Do we change this scenario? It's always a problem of utilitarianism. However, under deontological ethics, it's the categorical imperative. It must be consistent, it must be universal, and it must be reversible. So when it does not work for the totality of people anymore, we need to reverse plan, okay? Now, when it comes to the happiness issue, number three, under utilitarian, happiness matters. It's the greatest happiness principle, right? But under deontological ethics, happiness is irrelevant. Greatest happiness principle. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because we're still looking at what impacts an autonomy of another person. It is not going to be the greatest happiness of all. We've got to know what each person is capable of doing. We have to understand what each person is impacted by. Utilitarian ethics, less consistent over time. Deontological ethics, based on reason to generate these maxims, these rules, this test. Because remember, maxims means the test. So are these rules going to be consistent? So with utilitarian, it's less consistent over time. You can keep changing the scenarios and their principles will change. But for deontological ethics, because it's based on reason to generate the test for it, it is more consistent. And then number five, under utilitarian ethics, outcomes and results of ethical actions are hard to predict. Each situation changes, but under deontological ethics, and this is important, duty, obligations, and goodwill are also foundational, right? Because remember we talked about from the very beginning when we were talking about Kant and when we were talking about, this concept of utilitarianism, we talked about the Nuremberg Code. And then we talked about the fact that when we looked at this emphasis on this personal autonomy, we have to understand that Kant maintains that we ought not do even these things that would produce the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people if it doesn't meet that maxim, if it doesn't meet the test, right? So what can I know and what ought I know? That's really that important concept for Kant moral philosophy. And last but not least, when we're finishing up deontological ethics, deontological theory asserts that there is a rightness of action is determined partly or entirely by their intrinsic value. So when you're looking at deontological theory versus consequential theory asserts that the rightness of action depends solely on their consequences. And so that is why there is the difference between utilitarians and deontological, because one is looking at the principle of utility, the group, the biggest group that matters. Deontological is more dealing with the autonomy of people and the maximum rules, making sure that everyone can abide by these moral codes. Any questions?
Yes. So as a person, can you be both, like with those theories? Are you to tell utilitarianism, tarian,
Yeah.
or okay, because
one or the other. That's why we're talking about the concepts. And most people, they don't affix a name to it. You know, we often think and act in certain ways a lot, Yasmin.
right,
We act and talk and argue about concepts, and we don't think about these philosophies. This is just kind of how we think. So oftentimes we are in different spaces, and that's why people who are ethical relatives says that, yeah, that's why we know that really there is no black or white. There is no right or wrong, because it's all relative to who you are. And so that's why we would argue that utilitarians are wrong and Kant is wrong and virtues are wrong, because everybody's going to wind up doing their thing. But yes, oftentimes we are on different planes for different things. And so you might be a utilitarian when it comes to one topic that may be a heated topic, and then you might swing to a deontological perspective for something else. And then you might be an ethical relative for something else. And then you might be a virtue person for something else. It all depends upon.
So it's just a mixture. We just a mixture of everything. Okay, because when I saw what he said about I'm gonna just say utility for now. When he talked about the hypothetical question, what if? And there's plenty of times I have what ifs in my head, moments like, say I'm in a bathroom and I put my phone over the toilet bowl on a thing, and I had in my head, what if my phone would have fell in the toilet when I should never put my phone right there in the first place? I could have put it over here. So that's all I want to know. But all right, cool.
Yeah, but remember, the what if has not to do with the scenario that you're speaking of. The what if, it has to do with the trolley problem. Okay.
Okay. So, okay.
In a situation where there is a position where America right now, we are looking at what's happening in Ukraine. We're looking at what's happening in Russia, right? So the what if now, if this war continues and it continues to impact our economy, because oil and all of some of these trades and what have impacted our economy as a result of that. So what if now is if Putin is working with China, which they think that's happening right now with these balloons that have been coming into our airspace.
Those little balloons.
Right. So if they decide to team up and come after us because we have been helping Ukraine with, military aid to their cause, then this is the what if. The what if in utilitarianism would say, well, let's talk about the principle of utility. What's going to be the greatest happiness for the greatest amount of people, right?
Right. Okay, I get it.
It would say the what if is, let's look at the maximum rule what is it that we can do that's going to impact everyone on an individual basis? And so they're going to be looking at that differently. So you might be a deontological person when it comes to war and says, hey, autonomy, let Ukraine fight their battles. and
And I saw that like being on social media, looking at the shade room, and you look at the comments, just people everywhere. And you had some people saying, y'all don't even take care of the United States, the people in the 50 states. How y'all gonna go over there and take care of Ukraine when we still got homeless people? So I see it when you were talking about it. I see the theories on both sides. Like I see it.
Yeah. So you have different thoughts and different philosophies, and some people own it, people like Peter Singer, which we'll be talking a lot more when we get into some of the concepts in the talk, in the topics after the midterms are over. He is a proponent. I mean, he was a proponent of utilitarianism until he died, kind of thing. And he did die.
Okay.
He was a utilitarian, just hard base. There was no deontological ethics in him. There was no virtue ethics in him. Hard driving. And people sometimes are hard driven deontological. Some people are hard driven virtue ethics and nothing else. So you have to just kind of, as you learn the concepts, kind of look and see and see kind of how you develop as the class comes on and how you think. And that's what this whole class is about, is to help you to critically think through your own ethics, because you're going to be faced with it in your everyday life, and you're going to be faced with it in your careers. You're going to be faced with it in your marriages. You're going to be faced with it in your organizations, whatever that you participate in. You're going to constantly be faced with ethical dilemmas.
Okay. Now going back to, remember when we was talking about when you asked us what law would you come up with or something like that? Like when Dominique was talking about if she could do it, she would have everybody go to college for free. And
Yeah.
you said something about the disabled people.
Right.
So going back to that, what were we talking about in that day? That was the utility. I hate that word.
No, we were just beginning to talk a little bit about, we were finishing up utility, and we were talking about act and rule, and then we were
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So back to that. I don't know if this is off the subject, but I had came up with one because I've been trying to get it out since the last time for class, but it had to do with Easy Pass. And I see it affects everyone. Everybody has a bookcase of those, everyone. So I had came up with the idea was, if you're from that state, you shouldn't have to pay a toll. But on the contrary, where everyone can still get paid, meaning the government can still make their money, if you're traveling through those states, you should be able to pay a toll. Now, how would that, like, how would that, like, okay, so what would that be? What would that be? Would that be like a part of the act or the rule, or?
So remember the purpose of the tolls in the first place. So oftentimes tolls are established when new roads are made. So when a new roadway is, a new tollway has been built, the tolls help to pay for that road. So then you would think that once that has been paid for, that we wouldn't have any more tolls. But then our leaders, our legislative people will tell you, no, so now we got to upkeep these same roads. So now what you're doing is you're paying for the upkeep of the roads. So instead of we asking you and raising your property taxes, which is not going to be fair along the way, because if you're owning a property as opposed to renting a property, you're not going to have the same you're not going to have the same division of assets than those who are the homeowners. So they're going to get hit by that, but then those who are in the apartments, oftentimes they're going to get a little hit, but it's the apartment owners that are actually going to
Gotta
get.
get hit.
So what they're saying is that the principle of utility is that everybody pays.
Okay, I get it now.
You pay
Okay.
for it, and then all the visitors that come through the state pay for it as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's how it should be, but okay, I get it.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it goes. Any more questions about Kant before we start visiting into virtue ethics? And we're not going to do a lot of virtue today. We're going to spend more time on that on the
Thursday.
any more questions before we move on, guys?
No, I'm good.
How about you, Dominique?
I don't have any questions. I feel like Kant himself is confused because
Yeah, tell me.
it's like he just is like on both sides. Like how we were talking, how you guys were just talking about the school and stuff and what we was talking about last week. It's just like, I don't know. Well, maybe that's just my view because like I am, like she was saying, like, can you be both? You know, like at this point, I feel like every single scenario that we've discussed has resonated with me in one way or the other. But I just feel like I'm just such a, well, maybe we'll run across this, but like a realist and like I'm spiritual. So it's just like certain things are just like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm making
You
sense.
don't have to, in your ethics, you don't have to be one person. The reason why we talk about the philosophers is to tell you where these concepts come from. So that when you hear it, when you see it, when you're discussing it with someone, you can say in the back of your mind, oh, they're talking about the principle of utility. Or, oh, yeah, they're talking about a deontological ethical perspective. Or they're talking about a virtue ethic. Oh, they're definitely an egoist, or they're definitely, this is psychological egoism, or, you know, all of these things will pop into your mind when you're thinking of it, because the hope of this class is that you are able to see people and talk to people about these issues, these hot topics and these lower topics, and be able to appreciate the different points of view by understanding where people are coming from, because these concepts, whether or not they know a name or not, are things that are infused in people from where we talked about the normative statements, either your home, however you were raised, from the law, right? From the customs that you know, have been infused in, from aesthetics. All of these things, you know, impact how we think. And we are very influenced by our society, by our communities, by the things in our religion. These things impact us more than we think, and it shapes us. So that's why sometimes we might lean very closely toward our religious perspective, but then we might find ourselves way over here with something that may not agree with our religious perspective on another concept. Because if I believe, like many conservative Christians believe, they will believe in, and we won't get into this discussion because we've got to discuss this after the midterm of abortion. They will believe that many who are pro-life will say you should never kill a child, that at the beginning of life begins at conception, and that is where it begins. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better, dear. I hope you feel better. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm listening.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You just feel better, okay? So you may have this idea that I believe in life. Because remember, we talked about how the concepts of life or the value of life can change depending upon your perspective, right? So I value life, pro-life, concept of life begins at inception, right? Conception, right? But I may, in that same breath, say that a person who has committed murder, based upon my understanding of scripture, would say that person deserves to die. So they deserve the death penalty because just like the young men who just killed all of those kids in Michigan State University yesterday, this person needs to go and die because Michigan, I still think, has capital punishment. So they should die. So you see the value, I value life, but I don't value the life of this criminal, but I justify it by either my religious understanding of scripture, my law that says that I can inflict this type of punishment on this person, or my custom or my personal beliefs that says that this baby needs rights, but this criminal doesn't. That makes sense?
Yeah.
We're a dichotomy.
Yeah.
I actually had a question too.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know, it might be off topic, but on topic. So you've been teaching ethics for a long time. So I had a question. In in this class, when you hear us talk, what kind of ethics do you think like myself has from how we've talked in class and stuff?
I think we do pretty good, Dom.
Yeah, it's not for me to obsess because we haven't even gotten to the end. I will know when you get to your presentation kind of where your ethics are.
Oh, wow, we got presentations.
Right. I'm like, wait a minute.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Okay, good way to slip out the question, Professor.
No, because
You asked.
you're still developing. You're still developing. We have more concepts for you to learn. So I can't say you're.
I know. I guess I was like now, like in this
Yeah,
moment.
Dominique,
with
that
our
was
class.
a great question because I want to know me. Do I have good ethics or I almost feel like I have bad ethics?
Yeah, this is for you to process through because once again, I said to you, I could be on one concept, I can be very much I can be an ethical relativist as it relates to same-sex marriage, right? But then I could be a I could be a utilitarian when it comes to the rights of making sure that everyone has universal health care. And then on the other hand, I could be a deontological, ethical individual, a Kant theorist that believes that everyone should be valued and that there should not be a moral rule that should be affixed on someone who cannot meet this goal. However, I could be a very virtue ethical person that says that because of my beliefs and my belief system, that I believe that people should act a certain way.
Mhm.
So you will find yourself in
We all confused.
different times thinking through your process, but you will begin to see more who you are as you go through these big hot topics that we'll be talking about after the midterms. And as you all get into those discussions, I will really get a chance to see where you guys are coming from. If you all are thinking through with the theories that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, because like I told you earlier, I was panicking because I even texted Jeannie last night. It was like, hey, did you do your assignment? Because like I'm lost.
I gotta do my
seriously, but
assignment too, but it's gonna be in.
I
You
feel better.
Well, are doing fine. I promise you, you're doing fine. Okay?
I'm gonna get mine in before midnight.
All right, let's go on and move on to virtue ethics, because I at least want to get that introduced, and then we're going to finish the concept on Thursday. So let me go on and share my screen. So we're going to start talking about virtue ethics. But what we're also going to be talking about is some nature ethics as well. But what we're going to start talking about is virtue ethics, and that's going to be found in chapter 8 in your book. Virtue ethics is interesting because there is some very interesting concepts in there, and I'm going to do this so that you can see this a little bit better. So let me go back here. Let me move this out of your way so you can see. Interesting.
Jeannie. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you want to ask your question to Jeannie? Go on.
No, don't worry about it.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So I had an opportunity last year to actually go to Arizona and to visit the bridge where they had a monument to this man. This man is called Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman was a successful NFL player, and he played for then the Arizona Cardinals. They were known as the Cardinals then. He had been drafted, earning hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when September 11, the attacks of 2001, many of you probably are not old enough to remember the September 11 attacks. Are you all familiar with 9/11?
I was in the 6th grade and I saw it from the window when the towers fell. And one of my friends that was in school, his mom died actually in the towers because she worked in the towers.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry
remember.
to hear that, Yasmin. Well, for the rest of you who are maybe not familiar, 9/11 was the attack on the trade centers, also on the Pentagon. And we believe that the last actual plane was going toward either the White House or the Capitol. It did not make its way there. It actually, the people who were on board of that particular plane, they fought them and they all died in Pennsylvania when they rebelled against those who had hijacked that plane. All of those planes were hijacked at the time. And what we were told at that time is that our enemies were in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so on September 11, the attack took place. The trade centers were destroyed. The Pentagon was demolished. And like I said, only because of the rebellion of those who were on the plane at the time was actually the downing of that particular plane that did not go into the Capitol or the White House, whichever was the target for that. Tillman turned down $3.6 million contract offer from his Cardinals to renew and enlisted in the Army because he believed as a result of many others who enlisted at that time that he wanted to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan because of the thousands of people who were killed in that attack. It was the first time that on the soil of the United States since, the Civil War, that there was an attack, not the Civil War, but the against England, that we were actually attacked on our shores. Anyway, while he was enlisted with his unit in Iraq and Afghanistan, he was killed by accident by members of his platoon during a firefight. Tillman's death prompted several controversies because the Army initially informed Tillman's family and the public that he was killed by enemy fire in an apparent effort to preserve the image of Tillman as a war hero. Among other awards that he received was the Army's Silver Star of Valor. But in a subsequent book about Tillman, claimed that Tillman was not a supporter of the Iraq War and that he was very critical of President George Bush, who was at the time the president who sent them to war. Nonetheless, Tillman remains as a model of virtue and courage in the book that John McCain, Senator John McCain, who was a famous senator, and he wrote a book called Character is Destiny. And he used Tillman's story to explain the virtues of citizenship and patriotism. And it was remarkable about Tillman in his willingness to sacrifice a lucrative football career for his life and death as an Army Ranger. The interesting thing about friendly fire, though, is that they do believe that he was attacked from his own unit. Okay, he seems to have embodied virtues of courage, loyalty, self-sacrifice, and patriotism, but often mourned as deficient or absent in our contemporary society. And so the question is, when we think about virtues like courage, loyalty, self-sacrifice, and patriotism, do you agree with this assessment? Do you think that we lack that today? Courage, loyalty, self-sacrifice, patriotism? Or what role do you think that virtue plays in your own moral life? So I'm going to stop that and ask you to comment.
I want to go first because, sorry, I'm going to try to speak as much as I can.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. I think he was very loyal and everything you said about him was great. But I flew 9/11. Like Yasmin knows, but I was a flight attendant for 25 years. I landed from a Vegas red eye September 11th. I was moving into a new place. I had no cable yet. Back in the days, we did AOL and the routing and the do. I had to wait to see what the heck was going on. I will still do it again. Fellow flight attendants died that day. I had 2 friends died at the tower. Virtue, yes, absolutely took a big part on everything, but we cannot just concentrate on 1 or 2 people. It was thousands. And if anyone ever gets a chance to go to the memorial, bring tissues, but you would see you can be one of them. So in this conversation, I can be one. You can be talking about me when it comes to virtue and stuff like that, and what we can do to be better. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Even with a daughter, absolutely. because I'm that person, I'm that loyal person that would do anything for everyone before myself. I would extend that, whatever needs to be extended. I'm a friend,
That is true. She's a good friend.
Thank you, Mama.
Very good
But
friend.
I will extend my all until you're okay. Until you're okay. I won't stop. But that's me. So it was me as a person, it was me as a flight attendant. You know, your life will come before mine because that's what I was trained to do. You will go out of this airplane before me. I'm the last person to go out. So that's what it will resonate with me if I'm clearing what the topic is about. I will send to my ground of who I am.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Did you ask us a question? Because my phone was going in and out a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Yeah, so the question was, when we were talking about this virtue that John McCain said that Tillman did because he was willing to sacrifice his football career and life and death in the Army because of this. He says that he had courage, loyalty, self-sacrifice, and patriotism. He said in his book that he felt that that was deficient and absent from our contemporary society. And I asked the question, do you first of all agree that this is absent and deficient from our contemporary society? Janine says no. And then what role do you think that virtue plays in your own moral life? And she shared with us how that that deals with it in her own life. So.
Okay, can you say it in another way?
Yeah, so in other words, oftentimes we think that certain heroes, you know, have this patriotism or they, you know, their self-sacrifice. Some people would say, I think it was Captain Scully who landed the plane on the Hudson, right? He was noted as a hero. You would think about Malcolm X or Martin Luther King as heroes, people who self-sacrifice, who had courage. You think about people who have gone forth and, you know, Chuy Garcia, who have continued, you know, to beat the drum in the Congress about the rights of people, about immigration. You know, there are people who continue to beat the drum, who have courage, who have this patriotism, who have this loyalty, who self-sacrifice, who are even willing to give up their lives. So John McCain says in his book that he believes that people don't do that anymore. That people don't have self-sacrifice, that they're not patriots, that they're not willing to, you know, do for others. And so I'm asking you the first question, do you agree with that assessment that doesn't exist? And then number two, how does virtue ethics work in your own life?
Yeah, that's better now. Thank you. So I agree with him, like, to an extent. Like, there's not a lot of people out here anymore that's patriotic or loyal to society. If you see today's society, everybody is literally for themselves, no matter what the situation is. Okay, so then when you get like Tyree Nichols, who got killed by who died from the 5 police officers, they were all Black. They got locked up immediately, immediately. But whereas when my goodness, how can I forget his name? The one who had the foot on his neck, the knee on his neck, with the white cop put the knee on his neck. What was his name again? I'm sorry.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They didn't get locked up right away. It was all this controversy, like beating around the bush, where in reality, where everybody and their mom saw what happened on camera. Why wasn't he locked up immediately? But whereas, like I said, the 5 officers that beat, Tyree up got locked up automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like people only fight for when it's something benefiting them, like benefiting them. Does that answer the first part?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Oh, okay. Now, as far as virtue in my life, yes, I'm when it comes to my family, my children, I'm just gonna use them as example. I'm gonna say to people, period, not just my family. I'm a loyal person. There's no way I can explain it. I just know I'm there. Some people might say like, yeah, you're when you're going through stuff, you don't reach out. That's just not me. But I know if something's going on with somebody that surround me, like I just feel their energy, where I'm that person to, hey, look, I know times are rough. I know times is light. Look, I'm going through the same thing, but we could do this. Like, we can do this. It's going to get better from here. Like, God promised us, like, I promise us our desires will be answered if we follow through. And we just got to keep going. So, as far as the virtual in my life, down, whereas that loyalty, and I'm still patriotic to an extent. Yeah, do I sing America the Free still, or do I join a Pledge of Allegiance? No, I do not, because I feel like we need to be all on one accord to even feel that presence again, and we're not. The whole world is segregated, no matter how we look at it. So I hope that answered that, but yeah.
It does. It does. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, you welcome.
Dominique, did you want to chime in?
Well, I feel like, if that's what he wanted to do, to like, because I guess it may have made him feel good, but also like he wanted to like save the country in another way instead of like on the TV screen. So like that's admirable, I guess. I wouldn't do it because like I don't want to join the army. But
I don't
like,
either.
but like would I sacrifice myself for someone that I love? Yes, like of course. I mean, like I feel like we do it all the time in like our regular lives, just with our own emotions. Like that's sacrificing your life, because after you go through enough trauma, or hold on to a relationship that isn't really serving you any justice, it's like, I'm not gonna keep sacrificing myself for you. Like, are you crazy? So so like, I mean, I can agree and say like, yeah, it's nice that he did that. And what was the second question? Like, do I?
Your own moral. Are you have virtues? Do you believe that you have virtues as well?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that was my second part. Like, I will sacrifice myself for like my family, but at a certain time, like you also get tired too. Like, I don't know. I just like, I love my people, right? Like my friends, my family, like I'm one of those people that just like, well, can't we all just get along? That's me, because like I don't want to deal with the drama. Like my life was hard enough growing up, so it just put different things into perspective, like where a lot of women now, it's like, well, he ain't paying my bills, what is he here for? It's like, huh? I mean, I get you to a certain extent, but it's like at the same time, that's not an obligation of someone to show that, like granted, people's love language, like my love language is like gifts and trinkets of appreciation. And, so if you're not doing that, it kind of just but it's also time. So it's like somewhere, I don't know if I'm getting off topic, but I think I'm on topic because it's just basically like my vow, like my morals. It's just like I'm that way, you know, with people and just showing up for people. So I expect the same. So
You expect loyalty.
yeah, like that's really big. Loyalty and communication are like my number one things. Like if you can't do that, then I can't even like talk to you because I don't know. Sometimes I always say too, it's hard for me maybe to
And
relate to like people
sorry.
who haven't really like been through the struggle
Mhm.
too, because it just makes me like you can't really understand what I've been through. So like we're not really even on like the same page starting out. Is
Mhm.
some how I be feeling too. But I still try to just be loyal and that's my morals. And I hope I stayed on topic because I feel like I was jumping
You
off.
did, you did. That's fine, Dominique. Thank you. Yeah, I see your hand up.
Yes. Back to what you were saying, like what we were saying about the soldier and his real deal was where he wasn't for fighting against Iraq. Basically, he really wasn't for a war, period. And he really wasn't feeling George Bush. I don't think nobody was. Nobody was. For them to cover it up to say, oh, he did this, he did that, and basically for them to cover it up and not tell the actual truth of the person he really was in the beginning, and for them to have to write the book, for the guy to write the book to put it out there, that who he really was, it makes you question the people you supposed to protect. It makes you question the people you have this loyalty to. And when I say the people, not the people that we're actually fighting for, like the ones that's sitting at home and seeing it from their TV or whatever, or the families that's home waiting for their loved ones to come back. It's the ones that's putting you in those positions. Hey, I need you to go fight out there, bring this back, and this is what's going down. And if you don't like it, oh well, but we'll cover it up. And it's like, is this what I really want to have my loyalty to? Is this what I want?
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things, and let me go on and share this, and then we're going to close for the day.
Okay.
This is, yeah, here you go. Let me see if we can share it so that you guys can see it.
Put my hand down.
So this is the Hoover Dam, and this is where the memorial is. Can you see the picture?
Yes.
This is at the Hoover Dam, where the memorial for him is. It's the Michael Callahan, Pat Tillman Memorial Bridge. And so, you know, this is a big deal for him, for someone that, you know, we don't know whether or not, you know, he did not die in the valiant way that, you know, that we were told that he died, you know. Friendly fire means that he ticked off his unit and they killed him. So, you know, we don't know what happened. We probably will never know what happened, but we just know that it was not this courage. But yet, the memorial plaque is there if you all go by the Hoover Dam and you all brave that wind, whenever it's windy up there, and you go in there, it is, you know, platted there. And
What year was that, may I ask?
I'm sorry.
What year?
Oh, what year was it that he passed?
No, what year was it at the plaque? Because I was there, I took my daughter there, my
I
mom.
just went like I was saying earlier, I don't know if you were on when I was saying that, but I was there just this past year.
Oh, okay, no, I was there
In November.
a few years ago. I took my daughter for her birthday. She loves Vegas. But we took a tour to the Hoover Dam. I didn't see it.
Yes.
I would definitely try to want to go back and see that. That's very nice.
Stairs, they have you walk up the stairs and you go across, where once you go through that loop, you know, up those, you know, the big.
Yes,
The bridge, that's where it is. It's in that cubby hole, right?
Okay. But if you were there recently, I wasn't. I was there just like about 4 years ago and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice to know.
I took the picture just for you all.
Maybe I missed it all. What does this topic have to do with ethics? If you could just, I mean, I'll go back and watch the YouTube, but
virtue.
I just want to know what this portion has to do with
Yeah, we're talking
ethics.
about virtue ethics, and he is
Virtue,
one of the
okay.
guys who, epitomizes virtue. That
Yes,
his football career
yes.
for him to sacrifice in order to fight
So
in.
it's considered virtue ethics.
This is virtue. This part is virtue ethics.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
But I got a question. If he really wasn't for, going to war, was he drafted where he had to go?
There wasn't a
No.
draft. There wasn't a draft for that war. There wasn't.
So he literally chose to say, I don't want to go to the NFL.
There was a lot of people that even,
chose to go because
signed up just because after 9/11.
yeah, they were very emotional.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was okay. All right.
Yeah, and he left his lucrative career, so that is why he's empowered. That's why his name is up there, because who leaves a very lucrative football career to choose to go into the military?
And I get it, because like, what if it got worse and today it wouldn't be no NFL, it wouldn't be no football where they could still be playing, So yeah, I get it.
It would be like if LeBron James, if we were still in Afghanistan today, it'd be like if LeBron James decided to leave his career of basketball and go to Afghanistan to serve in the military.
But it's so crazy how one person just get that recognition. But what about the little people that decided to go?
But if you remember that one movie, A League of Their Own,
I'm so glad
all the men went and the female were the one that hold the sports down.
I'm so glad that you all started with this topic, because that's what we're on Thursday. So
Okay.
I'm going to go on and shut off our recording for today, and then we'll continue this on Thursday.